Welcome everyone to BRG 2020, part of the Blockchain Global Week. I'm Lakshmi Srinivasan, Global Head of TCS Interactive and TCS Blockchain. Very happy to be connecting with all of you to talk about an important aspect of ecosystems. TCS have been looking at the future of industries as part of a Business 4.0 framework. And we have worked with think tanks and thought leaders in order to understand what future holds for us to be able to help drive the growth and transformation for our customers. I have with us my colleague, Frank Diana, who will be giving you a glimpse into the future. And then we will start talking about how we could potentially get to that future. Over to you, Frank.
Thanks, Lakshmi, and it's a pleasure to be here today. As you mentioned, I am a futurist, and so I spend most of my time obviously focused on where the world may be going. And one key aspect of this evolution of society is this notion of ecosystems. So what I want to do in about 10 minutes is just focus on a perspective on where this may all be leading us. And as you can see from my title slide, the history of the world is also very instructive in terms of where these things might go. And so I'll start with that look at history. Basically, the second industrial revolution is still known today by historians as the most transformative period in all of history, where we've seen the biggest gains in human development. And this story is basically a vertical story where industries and value chains emerge to actually enable that human development. So what we've known for at least 2 centuries is this vertical orientation around industry. And as time progressed, we realized those advancements in human development through a number of innovations that align very nicely with our areas of well-being. As you can see from this innovation wheel, a 100-year period between 1870 and 1970 led to these advancements around things like health and food and transport, et cetera. And amazingly, some of the things you see on the inner part of the wheel were the innovations that actually got us here. So a really transformative period in history, but again, very vertical in nature. The modern day era that we are facing and approaching represents a new period of great invention. I don't think anybody would dispute that we're seeing massive innovation in so many different areas that likely will be known eventually as the greatest period of invention in all of history. And so what that period looks like, and we're starting to see that play out all over the place, is much more of a horizontal story, not a vertical story. So this notion of ecosystems really is a transition from this vertical orientation to more of a horizontal view. And interestingly, as we think about the conversation around purpose, we start to see another alignment to areas of well-being. So as we think about our life experiences, solving the friction problems in those experiences is going to take a horizontal view. And that means industry is less relevant and organizations individually can't solve these problems. And as they come together in ecosystems, we'll see a path towards some really good advancement in human development yet again. So as I look into this further, this wheel emerges. And so this is a play on that first innovation wheel that starts to look at some of the invention and innovation that is likely to yet again advance our well-being. And so health, some fascinating things happening there, food and sustainability in that department, fascinating as well. And I'll spend a little more time on that specifically, but I won't go through this in detail, but it really does talk to an emergence of yet another period where great invention moves us forward. But this path likely looks different. And so we took a view of what the world might look like looking back from 2050 in the context of these ecosystems. And so if this world, which was industry focused, was driven by our industry, then this world is likely going to be enabled by the ecosystems that we're talking about. And what you see here it's just a point of view in terms of the ecosystems, the finite set that might exist in 2050. So what is an ecosystem? And you can see a definition there. It represents really a coming together, a network of stakeholders that are interacting in ways that everybody shares in the value creation and capture. So it really is more peer-to-peer, and it is clearly more about shared value propositions. And in thinking about ecosystems, there's a number of different things to consider. One are the participants in that ecosystem. Who are they? How do they participate in value creation and capture? There are the value propositions themselves. How does that ecosystem actually create value? There are a series of value exchanges. What happens in the ecosystem in terms of value? Is it monies that are handed off? Is it information? Is it brand value? There's a number of different things to consider. And then there are these impactors. What drives the ecosystem forward? And it could be anything from innovation to societal trends, to these emerging scenarios that represent the future. And I'll get into this in a little bit of detail. And I'll do that first by talking through how these ecosystems may form. And this is evidence we're seeing already. So it's clear the path is forming. So first and foremost, every leader around the world, for the most part, is thinking both in terms of platforms because of the growth potential they represent and the ecosystems that form around those platforms. So think in terms of those life experiences that I was talking about. And Uber and Airbnb are great examples of attacking a life experience and taking friction out of it. As these ecosystems form, redundancy is built. And it really is a common story. Where we see redundancy, we ultimately see consolidation. So consolidation somewhere in this 20, 30-year period ultimately forms a finite set of ecosystems. And again, you can see some of a point of view here on what they might look like. And as they form, one interesting phenomena is this movement towards near zero marginal cost. So what happened in media and entertainment, and as we saw the cost structure drop considerably, is likely to happen across every domain. The maker community, for example, is taking cost out as we're able to make things much more cost effectively. And that really is going to happen across every domain. And as that happens, we start to really challenge the scarcity paradigm that our economic system is built on. And we move much more effectively toward an abundance paradigm. So with all of that, let's take an example and drill in. So I'll look at the maker economy and really focus on more of a sustainability theme as we look at environment, social, and corporate governance emerging as a very hot topic across boards around the world. This all gets much more important. So let's look at what an ecosystem model might look like. And visualizing these ecosystems has been the most effective way to have leaders think about ecosystems. So let's look at the food and agricultural ecosystem as it evolves. And there are a number of different domains to think about in any ecosystem, from customers all the way through to governance entities. And as we think about those domains, we start to see the stakeholders, as I mentioned, that form around a given domain. And so these stakeholders and visualizing them help us understand who plays in this emerging ecosystem and what role we might play as it evolves. One critical dimension is the adjacencies that form around an ecosystem and how those ecosystems in of themselves interact and play with a given ecosystem. And then on the other end of this is the really critical discussion, as I mentioned, these impactors. What innovations are emerging that will influence the path of an ecosystem? In the case of food and agriculture, there is a feeling that there's a complete disruption of that industry through a maker kind of model that starts to create food in very, very different ways, even meat, for example. So these accelerators completely transform the notion of food and agriculture, and again, really drive us more to a sustainable kind of world. So innovation is a big one. The other one are the societal factors. What happens at the societal level that influences or changes how this ecosystem evolves? And so another good example would be modern foods built in labs is likely to change the way society thinks about food. And as that happens, maybe more aggressive paths towards this ecosystem's form. And then lastly, as futurists, we track a number of scenarios that are emerging that likely transform the world. And I am a big believer that this decade specifically will be known as the most disruptive decade in history. And as these scenarios form, they also influence the path of ecosystems. So we have to consider all of these things as leaders as we think about where these ecosystems may go. And so all of that is supported by this notion of platform. So an ecosystem is supported by a platform. And here again, think about the Uber platform that enables and supports the ride-sharing ecosystem that's forming. And there's a very good reason for this phenomena of platform. Traditionally, businesses have been supported by one of four different business models, with most of them being in the technology creator, asset builder, and service provider domains. But we're seeing this notion of ecosystem driver or the business model of platform taking a bigger role. And in the future, most traditional businesses will shoot for hybrid business models that include a network kind of model. And again, the reasons are clear. That platform businesses have disrupted many industries, and they usually win because of the network effects that platforms can create. And so this tells the story. if you look at the business models and their impact, the network companies drive the biggest impact in terms of price to revenue ratios. So it's fairly clear why this phenomena is playing out and why CEOs around the world are embracing this notion of both platform and ecosystems. And Lakshmi, if I could go back to you for a second and ask a question. As we think about these platforms, what do you see as the major technologies that support these platforms going and ecosystems going forward?
Absolutely. I mean, there is no doubt that technology will not remain just an enabler. Will be right, in the middle center of driving these, platforms. We have seen this already, in case of the ride-sharing platform or the ability to have e-commerce, and how the likes of Amazon and Airbnb and Ubers have fundamentally disrupted the well-known business model, within these respective industries, stroke ecosystems. Definitely the next gen technologies, and I refer to them as ABCDE of next gen technologies, and there are a lot that is actually emerging. Augmented intelligence is going to play a fundamental role in being able to keep the purpose of this ecosystem absolutely at the center of everything that is being done. So even if the intent of some of the participants might probably go here and there, the ability to augment it with intelligence to keep it purpose-centric will go a long way. Blockchain, the reason why we brought up this topic of ecosystem is blockchain is a foundational ecosystems technology. It helps to orchestrate the processes across enterprise boundaries, as we have seen in a number of examples. And more importantly, blockchain could also be the governance layer. Today, enterprises are governed by the board and are answerable to the market regulators, right? How are these ecosystems going to be governed? And then if you go to ecosystems of ecosystems, right, coexistence, and some of these are going to be, so whether it is blockchain as a technology as we know it today, or how it actually evolves into a network technology will certainly play a critical role. Given the diverse nature of the entities and participation by consumers who could also be prosumers in some cases, such as in the food ecosystem that you talked about, inevitable is going to be the Internet of Things. To be able to sense, collect, react, orchestrate things at a much more distributed level, you're going to have IoT technology playing a critical role. So whether it's augmented intelligence, blockchain, cobots, dynamic data marketplaces, 5G, IoT, all of these are going to make some fundamental change to the way ecosystems can be curated and made easier to participate than to replicate.
Yeah, no, completely agree. As I think about ecosystems and the fact that most organizations are going to have to participate in one or multiple ecosystems in the future, one of the key dynamics is core capabilities of an organization being consumable by an ecosystem. So if we got even more fundamental as far as technology, things like microservices and APIs, effectively enabling ecosystem services that can be consumed regardless of the ecosystem that is participated in. Would you agree that those are also fundamental technologies?
Oh, absolutely. So you have some of what I call the larger orchestration layers, and then you would have to have a lot more of the digital core of the ecosystem. And today, TCS has been working very closely with the Fortune 500 to enable the digital core within the enterprise wall, which gives the business agility for them to tap into business opportunities, to react to competition. Now the inertia increases if you're going to bring more and more organizations, and distributed technologies have always struggled to be able to deliver on the promise of agility. So APIfication of some of these and exposing the services in a lot more open way is going to be absolutely critical, as you could see things that are happening in the the banking segment.
Yeah. One of the critical things that we're seeing as we talk to leaders about ecosystems is data really plays a major role in these ecosystems, and concerns about data sharing are one of the prominent challenges that every leader faces here. I imagine blockchain is probably a really good solution to some of the trust issues associated with data. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. So that's going to be the critical aspect of how these ecosystems will actually succeed. In fact, I was going to probably ask you on the success of these platforms have been on back of the experience that it delivers to the customers, right? How easy was it for you to hire a ride? How easy was it for you to order something and get something at your door, right? So the ease and experience really started the adoption. But very soon, the fundamental element of can we trust these ecosystem anchors? What is in it for us as customers over and beyond meeting the job that it's supposed to actually do. So being able to assure the customers that these are actors in the ecosystems acting on the best interest of the customer, and being able to prove that, right? So the institutional trust can be augmented by digital trust by technologies such as blockchain. So that's going to be another significant aspect, which I'm sure some of these platform companies are already working to embrace that.
Yeah. The trust question is a big question as far as how to attack this space and do it in a way where people do feel good about the experience, not just in terms of the frictionless, seamless nature of it, but the trust baked into the process. It is going to be a critical challenge for most leaders. Purpose, coming back to that notion of purpose, the purpose-driven mission statements that companies have to embrace starts to get to some of that, because you feel like the profit motive is giving way at least a little to more of a purpose orientation, and the good-natured vision of a business supporting the community, not just the shareholder, I think is a step in that direction. But privacy is going to be a concern, and to your points, blockchain really does help a great deal there. So those are my thoughts as far as the future of ecosystems. A good discussion on technology. What else can we talk to?
Absolutely. I think some of the experiences, Frank, I'm sure you have been talking to some of the executives, and for those of you who have perhaps listened into an earlier session, we had conducted an extensive survey on how our customers, our prospects, client executives to the senior leadership are looking at ecosystems, and it's a very interesting set of results that have actually come out from the study that we actually did. But I would like to kind of pick your experiences. Very often, a lot of these nested experiences today are made possible by entities coming together. So what do we see is going to be a big difference in the way these ecosystems come together or curated? Do we see more of the same, or is there going to be any tectonic shift in the way the curation happens?
Well, I think first and foremost, we're going to see more of the larger companies playing in the space and taking a much bigger role in these life experiences that I keep talking about in terms of creating them. So the Airbnb and Uber phenomena and the network kind of companies have been dominating the space. But clearly what we're seeing is the larger companies are looking at potential disruptions to given spaces, and then how they play a role in driving that disruption as opposed to being disrupted. So there's a lot of movement, if you will, CEOs and large businesses thinking about various ecosystems. Now, as they think about it, there's several things to think about. One is culturally, there are struggles in most big businesses because the collaborative nature of ecosystems works against the siloed nature of most organizations, right? So the big challenge first and foremost is, if we're going to play, then how do we operate in a multi-stakeholder community that for the most part expands beyond our borders? So one big challenge is culture. The other is, what role does a large business play in an ecosystem or ecosystems? Are they the driver of that ecosystem or the orchestrator ecosystem, the highest value position to be in, but also the most complex? And the trust conversation we just had plays a significant role in that. If I want to drive an ecosystem, what entices the stakeholders to provide me their data to help create the value in that ecosystem? Significant hurdles to overcome. Or do I basically operate and monetize in multiple ecosystems, and it provides a path to monetization that didn't exist before? So data is a big discussion. Everybody's talking about how they might monetize their data in various ecosystems, but it fundamentally challenges the leader to say, okay, first and foremost, how am I going to play? Is it the driver? Is it the participant, or what I call modular producer in a given set of ecosystems? But any way you look at it, the growth opportunity is large, but it represents a fairly significant transformation opportunity as well, because they're going to have to change if they're going to play.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the mindset change that, to move away from that we can do this by ourselves. Compared to that, we can do it with a set of known partners. There are today value chain ecosystems that exist to truly embracing. Let's put the purpose in the middle. Let's put the consumer in the middle, the customer in the middle, and try to bring whoever that we need to bring in order to make that purpose come true. In order to execute the job. Now that to me. That ability to embrace those models, even if they are risky to be able to write up a business case and do it, is what I have seen sometimes executives struggle to put their bets on. But as with any changes that we have actually seen, there are going to be a few pioneers and leaders that are going to show the way. And I'm glad that you're mentioning that some large entities are actually getting involved. I would like to take an opportunity to mention about TCS itself leadership position in looking at some of these. We're working on curating a skills marketplace by working very closely with the educational institutions that provide us the talent pool, and working with some of the accreditation platforms that exist today, from Udemy to multiple that have popped up in India. Interesting was seeing at some of the startups as to how they've actually grown, which creates a great opportunity for people to keep refreshing their skill set, essentially with an idea of creating a talent cloud. So you have anytime, anywhere talent to be consumed, which paves the way for gig economy. And we have seen some phenomenal interest from big brands in this particular space, who both enable this today in terms of finding the right job for the right people, as well as large job or gig generators who are clearly seeing that here is a great opportunity to leapfrog the business model of how we actually get the most out of the talent, and how the talent gets most out of their potential and their abilities. So it's a very interesting, and please do check out a dedicated session on this that is coming up, where we discuss the future of learning. That's one space that TCS is actively driving, given we have to manage about 450,000 people's aspirations and counting. I'm sure you have come across a few ecosystems that TCS could potentially take a lead. Frank, anything that comes up to your attention?
Yeah, well, actually, three big ones. Mobility, as you might imagine, is a big one. Everybody is seeing the shift in mobility and how we might travel in the future, and so that travel experience, has many in various different industries that are at least touched by mobility, focused on that ecosystem, where it might go and how they might play. So that's a really big one, and clearly TCS is involved in many of those conversations. The other one that's big and getting bigger because of the pandemic is wellness. Where is the broader wellness ecosystem going? Very complex, as you might imagine, but again, focused on the well-being aspect of purpose and advancement of human development. Wellness will play a major role, and I do think it's one of the most complex to come together because of the challenges of the healthcare system across the world. And then one that might not be as talked about, but again, I think is going to accelerate because of the pandemic, is energy. Where is the energy ecosystem going? As renewables take a bigger role, it's a very distributed, decentralized platform, and that's really a good analogy to the decentralized, distributed nature of ecosystems in the future. So I think that's a great one as well. You mentioned an important one, gig, and if I could just comment on that one, I think it really touches on two critical issues. One is the reskilling of society that has to happen as a result of the automation that we know is coming. And the other is, and again, this pandemic has shined a light on this, freelance and or other ways to get work done is going to be a critical focus area for leaders. And I think an ecosystem like that is really going to play well into that. So those are some of the primary ones I'm seeing.
Absolutely. So I think there's going to be enough opportunity for any enterprise, large or small or medium, to certainly take advantage of putting some of their bets, on how enterprises will start to come together as hyper-connected, ecosystems. As you pointed out, it's certainly possible for the different roles for the entities to actually play. Those who have the ability to invest, have the brand positioning, have the ability to get a critical mass to actually adopt could certainly harness maximum value from these ecosystems by anchoring this or co-anchoring this. Certainly can be exposing some of the fundamental or foundational capabilities that would be required for these ecosystems to not only sustain but to scale. So opening up of those services and making it more broadly available for ecosystems to consume will definitely be another opportunity as an ecosystem service provider. And then there are always going to be opportunities for you to, or any entities, to participate in the ecosystem, and that could mean contributing to some part of the value generation process, or being able to take advantage of the whatever is being generated out of that, and then look to enhance it. So it's going to be an interesting shift as we see. Certainly would love to look at how it looks in 2050. When we start to see some of these, but very, very convinced about the impact that these are going to actually bring in, the business model disruptions that this is actually going to cause, and would appreciate if comments from and views from all of you. I would like to also highlight that this session is going to be available for the next 3 months, for you to refer to, or for you to perhaps refer this to somebody else to check out. So do take the most out of what is going to come up for rest of this week, and hoping to be in touch with all of you very soon. Thank you. Thanks, Frank.
Yeah, thank you.